Hello and welcome to Talking Property Development. Today I'm joined by Andrew Crosby and Dave McCracken. We are going to talk a bit about surveying today. So if you're doing a development or plan on doing a development, then listen in because Dave has got a wealth of experience that he's going to share with us. Before we get into that, just a little bit about the property market in New Zealand today. So obviously we had the interest rate cut last week, 25 basis points. The next Reserve Bank meeting is coming up on the 9th of October. Expectations are for another 25 basis point cut. If that happens, mortgage rates should be 1-year rates somewhere around 5.95% is what we'd expect to see after the Reserve Bank cutting again, if they do on the 9th of October. I was just speaking to a mortgage broker at Squirrel Money who said that 1-year rates, the best rate you're looking at the moment for a home mortgage is about 6.19%. 18 months, you're getting about 5.79%. But just be a little bit careful fixing longer than 6 or even 12 months because those interest rates are likely to come down quickly.
I just did my sums, John, just fixed an interest rate. Because I thought I've been fixing it 6 months for everything over the last sort of year, thinking it's going to go down. But my 6 months is 6.79 and my 12 months is 6.19, as you just described. And if I fixed it, if I chose my 6 months and the 6 month hadn't gone down to 5.59 in 6 months, I'm better off getting the 1 year, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yep.
Now, if I held off to get my 1 year, I'd go to floating, which is 8.39. And that would have cost me $500 to save maybe $1,500, which sounds good. Well, then I have another problem. I think the banks are playing the opposite game now. I think they're sensing that everyone's going for 6 months, so they're overcharging for it.
Yeah. I think that's definitely the case. Well, the Reserve Bank's saying that the rates are not really going to come down substantially until 26 or even early 27, but the market's saying no, rates are going to come down next year and probably in the early half of next year. And so that's certainly what I'm working towards. I'm not fixing longer than 6 months at the moment, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But who knows? I mean, it's all crystal ball gazing, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. And I was talking to a lawyer this morning who does a lot of conveyancing, and she was telling me, they had a bit of a spur, and then it's gone dead again. So we're sort of at this. We're at this float, this bouncing along some sort of bottom thing. So you get a big...
what it is good is for shares and commodities. Cool. So the US stock market's been doing really well. Gold and silver have jumped. Nvidia's back up again. So stocks are doing really well. China's just come out with a massive stimulus move. They're going to support property and support the markets. So that's potentially a positive for New Zealand. If the Chinese have got more money, then they're going to buy more from us, hopefully. So we'll have to see where that goes. I don't really have a lot more on property this week. Have you got anything else, Andrew, before we chat to Dave?
Look, a couple of things. Something sad, the Chateau. Government can't make up their mind. Department of Conservation, they don't want to go to private tender. So they're talking about, I don't know what they're talking about, shutting, decommissioning. What does that mean? Pulling it down? They can't pull that thing down. The Chateau in Mount Ruapehu.
Yeah. It's such a shame. Such a lovely building. So iconic too when you go skiing there. Once you see the Chateau, you're excited, right? You're ready to go up the mountain and you're ready for a big day.
It's we used to go there and would spend 2 or 3 nights. And if we only got 1 day of skiing for the kids in, that's fine, Right. Because you got other stuff to do. And there's a fantastic walk and everything else. Hopefully I don't know. It looks like an expensive thing to maintain and fix and all the rest of it. And the last hotel operator had to give it back. So not great news.
Well, no, and they're not making any money out of the mountain either.
No.
We lost a couple of life passes there when they went under. They were gone. The COVID measures really were the death knell for the ski field. So yeah, that's a bit of a shame, really.
Look, there's been some other bits and pieces. There's an article which I think GJ Gardner's put out their 10 pointers for choosing a builder. And I found that document. You can search for it online. It's pretty good stuff, how you choose a builder, interestingly enough. they say you should look for someone who's got a balanced and fair building contract. So hopefully GJ Gardner follow their own advice, because I might have seen a few of their contracts. What other things have we got going on? Look, Tony Alexander came, he told us why house prices are 9 times income and ain't never going back to 3 times income. He gave simple things such as construction costs are much higher than they used to be, extra costs imposed by councils, much more expensive health and safety requirements. And that's not often said because we're all too scared to talk about health and safety. But I did a count, just in like 5 to 7 years, it went up about 15 grand a unit for health and safety.
Wow.
Once you add in, especially for multiple level stuff, when you've got scaffolding,
Scaffolding's massive.
and all this other things. So, but it's gone up. He's also said, look, no new cities like Dunedin, Christchurch, Wellington and City have been created in the past 3 decades. I mean, you can argue that Hamilton and Tauranga have grown pretty massively. And another interesting thing, which, a big thing for housing demand in America, and it's not really talked about in New Zealand so much, is number of occupants in a house. So when the economy, that creates household demand. So when the economy gets good in America, all the kids move out and want to buy a house. When the economy's bad, they move back in. Another aspect to that, which Tony Alexander brings up, is people are also living longer than before. So fewer older houses are being naturally placed on the market for purchase than before.
Yeah, good point.
So you don't just have to look at immigration. You just don't have to look at population growth. You've got to look at how long people are living.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, there was something else I saw actually on interest. Greg Nines said that he reckons there's 24,000 households who are facing mortgage payment increases and are really struggling at the moment. It's mainly people who took mortgages out between about May 2020 and August 21. So they were getting mortgage rates at that point at about 3%. So some of those people are having to come up with another $250 a week, which is, that's a lot of money to come up with if you're on a salary and you haven't got.
They would have fixed for 3 years, right? They probably would have taken a great rate for 3 years, under 3.
Yeah.
And wasn't quite long enough. Those people who took 5 years, they might, they should be congratulating themselves.
Wouldn't that be nice? 5 years would be great.
Yeah. There's a new development in Auckland called the Proxima. It's an apartment building in a place called Eden Terrace, which is on the fringe of the city. And this is probably, this is what happens with apartment buildings. It was conceived in 2016. Sales started in 2017. They got hit with COVID. But ironically, they didn't take advantage of the COVID to get to pre-sell everything. And they've just finished it. 2004 minus 2016, what does it equal? 7 and a bit years. 67 apartments. The Herald article is a little bit all over the show, but it sounds like they've sold about half of them.
Wow.
So, good on them. A concert violinist has done it, and it looks a good-looking project, but there's a little bit of water to go under the bridge first before they're clear on that one. And then something else, I think you touched on it last time. New builds cheaper, in Christchurch, new builds are cheaper than Auckland, but they're still higher than existing. And the news goes on to say that there's a big difference, a big delta between buying a new build and buying an existing now. Hasn't ever been that quite that large.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and there are a number of reasons for that, like increased construction costs. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot more compliance. They've got all the things like the increased insulation requirements and window joinery and all of that. But I think part of it's also the demand has come off some of the existing property. I mean, property investors are not buying existing homes like they were. They're just not as attractive with the risk of interest deductibility coming back in again with a change of government. So I think that's probably got a part to play as well. So there's a really big opportunity right now for first home buyers to buy older homes, which is kind of going back to the old days, right? That's what people used to do. You used to buy the cheapest house you could find, and then you do it up over time, and you turn it into a home, and you do the kitchen, and then you do the bathroom, and you paint it. And I think there's a real opportunity for first home buyers to get in there now and do that again.
I mean, it's the perfect time to buy them. You're going to get, I'm looking at it myself. We've always put it off. But, how about $100,000 a house, John, for a small house to sort of redo it? That's not completely gutting it, but that's new bathroom, kitchen, painting, sort out the roof, all those sorts of bits and pieces.
But you don't have to do it all at once, right? I mean,
No, if you're a first home buyer, you do it in the weekends at night time,
Yep.
You get equity, paint it yourself, you learn how to paint, you get the builder in for the difficult things, and you learn how to do the rest yourself, and you
The
build
question
that
is, though, are people prepared to do that today?
No,
In this instant society.
I mean, geez, I'm not a great example, but my mate used to work for a bank, and he got all these free carpet squares, John. Commercial carpet squares. So we decided to renovate one. Me and the brother-in-law, we owned a couple of properties. So we decided to rip out the old carpet and put carpet squares in there. And it looks easier, right? When you do start laying your carpet squares and you do a whole lot. And then you come to wardrobes and door frames. And oh my God, it took a week of back-breaking work on our knees to replace old carpet with, something we should never have done, which was carpet squares. Anyway.
Yeah, I'd never want to do carpet laying.
This has rocked Auckland. This has really rocked Auckland. I was talking about development contributions. We keep on moaning about them. The council have just come out in the last couple of days with their consultation document. This is excluding GST, John. Red Hills, which is part of Westgate, an area I know very well. We had a 1,500 unit development there. PCs are going from $25,000 to $89,000. Vanuapai from $25,000 to $102,000. And one of my favorite real estate agents, Wesley, says you're probably going to get stuck with a 20 or 30 grand water thing on top of that as well.
Wow.
Even little old Mount Roskill is going from 20,000. That's urban, right? That's urban. Is going from $20,000 to $52,000.
Ouch.
So it's pretty simple math. If you got let's say it's $800,000 house, it goes up 5% a year, 40 grand a year. You got to pay 120 grand extra and stuff to pay for your development contributions. That delays new supply by 3 years.
Yeah.
These are big areas, John. There's a lot of houses planned in a lot of these areas. It all points to one thing.
We're already at 5-year lows in building consent, so it's just going to get worse. So again, I say the buying existing houses today is a great investment because they're going to have to lift in value, aren't they? That gap will close again. I think there's an opportunity there now, but what's going to happen to rents? The immigration is continuing, and we're not building. Where are those people living at the moment? Crowding up? Do you think more people per house?
Yeah, I know that for a fact because I signed one family up and they said, "Can we have someone else move in?" Right?
Yeah. Right.
Without overcrowding, but that's happening. Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see where immigration falls, right? Where it ends up, the net migration into New Zealand. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully, this exodus to Australia, stops or slows down, or it's done. It's always going to happen, but has it done its?
Well, things need to start improving here. And for that to happen, we need interest rates to drop.
Yeah.
So hopefully by this time next year, we're in a much different position and things are looking a lot more positive and businesses are picking up again and they start hiring again. And, and then the drain to Australia will slow or stop, hopefully.
Yeah, and Australia ain't all rosy. Australia is not all rosy, is it? They've got strange things going on in Victoria with the government there.
A lot of taxes,
They're
lot
really
of rules.
putting the kibosh on development and investment and everything there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. All right, let's introduce Dave McCracken. Hello, Dave. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Dave is a very well-established surveyor. He used to have his own firm, McCracken Surveys, for many years. He's now part of Cheel. The companies were merged, and he brought his team along. Very experienced in land surveying, engineering, surveying, rural and urban subdivisions. I work with him on my resource consents and planning. Yeah, Dave has agreed to come along and answer a few questions, and hopefully our listeners can learn something from him.
Thank you for having me along, John, Andrew.
So, Dave, can you start out by maybe just telling us a little bit about what are kind of the most important things for someone who's going to do a development in terms of surveying? Where should they be starting out? What are the things they need to be watching out for?
Okay. I guess first off, it's about research. Knowing your property, knowing your site boundaries. Is the site what do you think it is? I mean, are the fences where they are they on the boundary or are they in the neighbour's place? Site levels are really important for any future development, so that your future design can be undertaken in compliance with council rules. You need a survey to establish those. The other important things are the infrastructure. What infrastructure is available? Have you got stormwater, wastewater, and water supply nearby? If you have, the surveyor needs to collect that information, so that can be included into the topographical survey as part of the design. What's the road outside your property look like? Has it got obstacles, power poles, street trees, other furniture that needs to be taken into account of with your design? So a topographical survey by the surveyor would incorporate all those features into the into the survey to enable the developers to do the best possible design they can from the information.
Right. So when you're carrying out your due diligence, part of it is going to be, obviously I recommend that people start with a planner, and if they were going to build, want to build 4 to 6 townhouses, say, they would sit down with a planner who would identify the areas. They'd then go out and look for sites. Once they've found a site, they might get it under contract, or even before that, they might want to sit down with a surveyor. How much do you normally do, and what do you look at once the site's under contract?
It really depends a lot on the site itself. Some sites are reasonably easy because they're more or less flat and there's nothing on them, so that's pretty simple. Right through to complex sites which are on steep hilly terrain, might have buildings that you want to retain or work around. Might be protected trees. It's another issue at times. So there's an awful lot of things that you would look at, and the surveyors got the expertise to look at that. Something that comes to mind is how you get access into this property. Again, flat sections are not too difficult. Hilly ones need a lot of design input to get it right, and that's very important to have your full design team available early time, which might be architect, designer, planner for planning advice, engineer for some infrastructure advice if you need it, surveyor for all the site information. Another thing we look at was, other easements across these properties. In council records, is there council infrastructure across the property or nearby?
Right.
Yeah, lots of
So like sewer lines, stormwater lines, that type of thing.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So once, when I purchased a site, one of the first things I do is get you to undertake a topographical survey. Can you tell us a little bit about why someone would do that and what that includes, please?
Okay, so topographical survey is about establishing primarily the levels of the site in relation to a benchmark, which is a national benchmark. And it's about enabling the designers to be fully informed. Things that might influence the site is flooding, which case good levels are required to establish what those flooding levels are, was having an impact on your design. The infrastructure, is your site going to be able to connect into infrastructure, or is it too low, or too high is usually not a problem. There's other features, locate infrastructure, power, where's your power and telephone, particularly it's overhead, are there power poles, where the fence is in terms of the boundaries, existing buildings which may or may not stay. If that buildings are going to go, that's not an issue. The roading, what levels of the roading compared to your site. Ideally, your site above the road is great because that means you can dispose of overland flow paths stormwater to the road rather than having this higher constraints of each site.
So the topographical surveyor would do, that would be the contour mapping, so you could see the exact heights on site. So you said identify all the features, drainage, buildings, roads, utilities. Do you also mark the boundaries at that point? So do you peg the site, or how does that work these days?
I think it depends on what the developer wants. Because we try to operate as efficiently as we can. We find that often it's better to do the topographical survey early on, and if there's no general conflict with the boundaries, with the fences raised the boundaries, leave it till later. If there is conflict, we'd want to peg the boundaries at an early time. So that's exactly what we're doing. In particular, particularly some really old sites where all fences need to come out and replaced. It's better to do that at an early time.
Dave, if I'm buying a site and it looks flat and the fences look straight, do I even need a topographical map before I get the architect involved?
Most definitely. Even a site that looks flat will have a slope on it, and it's not visible. And one of the important things with multi-unit development is that you're going to be designing to the max on that site, and you need to know that your buildings are in compliance, particularly with height ratio boundary. That's the biggest one. If you've got a site that isn't flat, but you design on a flat section, and they've designed it to the max, most height ratio boundary, you'll find that when you come to building, that will actually fail in 9 times out of 10, which then relates to costly rebuilds or neighbours' approvals and things like that. So topographical survey up front is really important. And
the last thing you want to do is build a fence or, God forbid, part of your house over the neighbour's boundary, right?
That's right.
And it happens.
It does, and we've seen many of them over the years. And as we get more and more densely developed, the position accuracy is more and more important, because you don't have any tolerances. So you've got to get it right first time.
So what's some war stories you've heard on that?
So what was that, Andrew?
What's some war stories you've heard on?
So you've
had to go in and fix, probably.
Yeah, we had we did a little while ago. The architect designed on a flat section. The engineers who were engaged by our client, we were involved, said that stormwater could over then flow path out to the road. The building sort of got underway. We looked at it till actually this land slopes away from the road. We had height ratio and boundary encroachments because it wasn't designed properly, and we had to redesign all the stormwater. And even today, it's marginally working. It's okay, but it could have been a lot better if it had been designed properly. If they had accurate information right at the start, rather than we come and have to fix the problems.
For sure.
Yeah.
So kind of on that, the first step for a developer is getting resource consent. So finding out what they can actually do with the land, how many units they can get on, for example. What are the kind of the biggest hurdles that you find that developers face to getting that initial resource consent?
Some of the biggest ones is getting, I guess, firstly, if it's buildings being designed in compliance with district plan. Some architects are really good at designing wonderful buildings, but they don't comply.
Right.
So we have problems there. Either end up redesigning it, or we get neighbours' approvals, which is really good outcome if we can get them. But it is a difficult task.
If you can get them.
If you can get them. We just went through one recently. We had a really nice design based on the new urban design high density rules. Hamilton City decided not to use those rules, wanted to get neighbours' approval. The neighbour didn't give us approval, so end up redesigning to comply with the current rules. So that's the type of thing that they don't usually get them designed in the wrong place because they use the cadastral boundaries, but those are the main sort of things that problems caused.
Okay. And I know we've talked about in the past that the councils are getting more and more specific, so looking for more and more detail. What other what changes have you seen over the last sort of couple of years, and what do you expect to happen over the next couple of years in terms of, what developers are going to face with councils?
Yeah. I guess first overall comment is councils are getting more and more risk adverse.
Yeah.
They want you to comply with the rules. But as time goes on, their district plans are becoming more and more complex. They're not only interested in just what called bulk and location, which is how your building fits on the section, but how you're going to deal with wastewater, stormwater, that sort of access, to the extent of how your property might be going to shade the neighbour's property, even though it's actually relevant to the district plan, but they look at all these matters that to mitigate their own risk, and
Right.
just getting more and more complex. Geotechnical assessments are another big one. It used to be a few years ago, they were actually really simple. Someone can do a couple of hand auger holes down 3 or 4 metres and write a report that's okay. Now we're into very complex geotechnical assessments, with probing down to 20 odd metres, and then liquefaction assessments and things like that. They all bring more complexity, more cost to the developer. Councils also more and more focused on disposing of stormwater on site. So that has its own challenges when you're sort of small sites and poor soils, just how you're going to deal with that. So those are all things that are assessed. Challenge that turn up that we find is that it depends on which council officer is processing the application, or they send it to some outside consultants. Get very, very, there's no consistency. And some of the stuff goes out to outside consultants that are not even in your district, and they don't really know what's going on. So they ask lots and lots of questions that you have to respond to whether you think they're relevant or not. Go back and say they're not relevant, but it's quite.
So it's just adding more cost and more time.
It's time consuming and costly. Even say it's not relevant, it takes time.
Okay, no, that's a problem.
And the other thing, some of them don't even read the applications.
Sustainability is something that that our buyers are more interested in these days. From a surveying engineering perspective, is there anything that developers could be doing to make their developments more sustainable?
Well, I guess that's partly been through the Three Waters process, and the councils want to reduce your input from water coming into the property, so with the of low flow fixtures and that, consequential reducing of your outflow, probably in terms of your wastewater. That's something that is a pretty good thing.
Okay.
So treating of stormwater on site through rain gardens or other types of things, and also disposing of rainwater on site where you can, rather than putting into council articulation, which then end up into watercourses and rivers.
Okay.
And it's another thing is reuse of water, so collecting rainwater and reusing it for non-potable purposes, such as garden water, toilet water. I'm not sure about laundry water, but for any non-potable use, councils start to encourage that type of thing.
Okay.
Now, how cost effective?
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, Dave, look, you have surveying, which is a little bit more than going and measuring the site and looking at the levels and seeing what's there. And then that evolves, though, doesn't it? That evolves from looking at the site to actually measuring the building and measuring the end result of the titles.
Yeah, so I guess from pure surveying perspective, we get involved in, I guess, with the architect in designing what the layout. I guess I'm thinking about the final titles, which is a sellable commodity, what that layout would look like. I'm looking at easements, so we get those right. But then when you get into the building process, setting out buildings, so the buildings are built in the correct place, because with higher density development, you don't have room to get things wrong. Then setting out of services if they need to be, not just your drainage, might be retaining walls on sloping sites, so they end up being on the boundaries, not just sort of somewhere near it. Setting up levels for the building so that they actually built to the right height, particularly important in low-lying areas where there might be flooding constraints. But also most designs now are based having floor levels so to ensure they meet height ratio boundary requirements. We'll be checking that and probably providing certification that it has been built in the right location, the right height to satisfy council for building consent sign-offs. Following the buildings gets under construction, we would measure where the buildings are, particularly party walls from that for the purposes of the land transfer surveys, which have been the plans to then become part of the title process. So that we do land transfer plans, which Land Information New Zealand, in New Zealand, who are the record keeper of all title information. Then the solicitor is another integral part of the team to prepare the easement documents and requests for new titles, which is a really important part of the process. But that's really right at the end of the process. Before we get to there, there's infrastructure that needs to be measured for as-built plans, as-built records for the client, but also for council. On infrastructure is vested in council, and what vesting means is that the developer actually gives it to council, but council then takes ownership of it and is responsible for future maintenance, upkeeping of that infrastructure. But of course, for council to take it over, it then has to be built to their standard, or quality assurance documentation provided, including testing and that sort of things. It's quite a process, and it needs to be followed, or end up with the end of the job to get it certified. One of the last things which I read the most important for most developers is the getting what we call a Section 2D4C completion certificate. That's the last certificate issued by council to say that the subdivision part of the project has been completed to their satisfaction, and that certificate, along with legal documentation, goes to LINZ so the new titles can be issued. And of course, all developers need their titles issued, because that is when they then have something that they can sell and recoup the great expense they've already spent along the way to get there. So it's quite a big process.
It's a complicated. There's a lot of. It's a complicated process, and if you're going to do development, you need to be right beside your surveyor, don't you? So, this is a self-answering question, I guess, but how crucial is the relationship between what you do, Dave, and the engineers and the developers, and any tips on improving communication with project teams? The whole area has got landmines all over it, right?
The real important thing is that whole team, and it's a development team between the developer, the surveyor, engineer, as it goes on, your planner early on, planner and architect design. That team has good communication between them, so that everyone knows exactly what's going on. And it's important that the developer is open and tells people or their team what's going on. As I said, we sometimes have people ring up, say, I want boundary to put a fence up. And then you find out a bit later, which might be the same phone call, and start asking questions, actually what they're doing. And you find actually the fence is only a little part of a much larger project, which might be a building development project. You actually say, well, actually, I could guide you through that whole process, trying to do things efficiently and make sure we get the right information up front so your project is successful. So it's really important that all the team is engaged early on, and everyone knows who's doing what and who's involved.
Yep. Okay, definitely. What are the biggest the biggest mistakes you see developers making?
Trying to do everything themselves,
Okay.
not engaging,
So trying to save money. Oh well, I can do this myself. I can just go and talk to council and sort it out.
That's right. And not telling, one person team who the other person is, and you end up either doubling up or end up finding what's even worse. Things are not getting done.
Right.
And probably at the resource consent stage, which is the early stage of the project, is actually not putting enough effort in by trying to save some money, because by putting a insufficient application into council, it'll get either rejected. It's the worst case it gets rejected, or the next case is they start asking for lots and lots of information which could have been covered if it was done properly first time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's got to be. There's definitely a process, and you've got to spend the money, in my opinion, the money and the time on the best consultants you can find. And I'm talking about planner, surveyor, civil engineer, designer, and get all this stuff worked out up front, which is why I always get the topographical survey done right away, so we know exactly what the slope is, we know what's on site, we know where all the services are, and we put in the best resource and subdivision consent that we can, because I know that getting the ground ready for building is the most important part of a whole townhouse development project. The building we can outsource. We can get a fixed price for the build from a building contractor. But the hard part is getting that land ready. It's getting all those services in. It's getting the foundations right. It's the stuff that other people don't see. And I think that's maybe why a lot of developers kind of don't get that right. They're focused on the building, they're focused on the plans and, what they're going to build, and they're excited about that, and they know what the houses will value up for and what they'll rent for and how they're going to look. I don't think they understand that you're not going to be in a position to build houses if you don't get this foundation stuff right.
Yeah, they focus, well, in my experience, they focus on the architecture. They want to be, they're all closet not all, but they're closet architects. They want the great design.
Yep.
And they get a costing from someone who's assumed a flat site and no issues, and all of a sudden the costs explode when you actually get the consultants in. But before that, you've spent $100,000 on plans. I mean, and then at the end of the project, especially in a medium density development, you can have your little buildings there sitting ready for occupants, but you're going to take another 3 or 4 months to get your titles because you haven't done your sign-offs properly. So it's not a sexy profession, is it, Dave? But my gosh, it is the integral, critical heart of proper development is, the interaction between civil engineering and surveying and architecture and getting it all right on site. And don't skimp. So now, let's say I've got a flat site. Can I not rely on the geomaps or the LINS data, Dave?
At your own risk.
Right.
And again, comes down to the tighter we are developing on a site, the more accurate the information is that you need to have. If you're building a house out in the rural areas, lots of room, then that data is generally just fine. If you're building to the max on a small site, you need to have absolute accurate data. And while it's a good guide as to what's going on, it is not good enough for that high density development, particularly when you're pushing height relation to boundaries, and you can't move floor levels down because you've got flooding and that sort of thing. So you need that centimetre accuracy type information, and you
need a topo survey. You need a geotechnical survey, so you know exactly what's going on in the ground.
Exactly.
Anything else that you need on those townhouse developments early on?
As much information as you can get on everything. So there's a site level we're talking about. There's geotech's important. Flooding, stormwater, overland flow paths.
CCTV, actually, if you've got any sewer or any council lines.
Yeah, if you've got council lines through the properties, take a CCTV. Well, actually, any infrastructure on site needs to be located. Actually, And the CCTV is actually good because you can put that down the pipe and you can see the condition of the pipe, but also sometimes find surprises that are not on anybody's records. It's good to know about that as soon as possible. Because last thing anybody in the developer wants is to find surprises as they're well into the project, and you can know that up front.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so a surveyor is a very important part of your project. You're going to be working with them from very early on. You're going to sit down with your planner, then your surveyor. You're going to look at your site, and you're going to work with them through your resource consent, your subdivision consent, all the way through working on your height to boundaries, and then getting everything ready, like all your civil works, your sewer, water, stormwater, your crossing, your street crossing, your driveway. So all of that type of stuff. They're also going to be involved in doing the as-built plans, so they measure everything up at the end before it goes into council. So they're going to get you your 223, which you need to submit to council to get your titles and to LINs. So there's somebody that you want to work very closely with, and as Dave said, share them, tell them who the other members of the team are, and that's an important part of being a developer, is that you are forming and managing a team, and you're the person who needs to make it happen. If someone's not talking to someone else, if the civil engineer's not talking to the surveyor, don't expect them to get in touch. Don't wait. Pick up the phone, call them, or get them on a Zoom call. Or get them onto site. I mean, I favour an early on a meeting on site with the whole team to talk about issues, because boy, things can change when you actually stand on the site. Then the designer says, "Oh, I didn't know that was there," or the drain layer says, "Oh, I thought this was somewhere else." Everyone's working from their screen. They're working from council information. They're working from all of this data, which is great. The only thing that really matters at the end of the day is the site itself. What does it actually look like? What's on it? What do we got to deal with? And that's caught us out more than once. People working off everything off desktop surveys, and the reality can look very, very different.
Yeah, I quite agree, John, that nothing beats meeting on site and looking at it, because it doesn't matter how good your aerial photographs are, street view, topographic information, there's always something you'll see on site that thought, that we didn't know it was there, or hey, this is a problem that we need to address. Or we say, yes, this is what I thought it was, which is always good.
Yeah.
Andrew, have you got any more questions before we wrap up?
No, good advice, Dave. Thanks for your time today. It's I can't stress enough. You got to really, if you're developing, you got to really get into your head all this and try and understand exactly what the survey is doing and the steps along the way and the coordination that's required, because it can trip you up. It can trip you up, and I've seen it. I've seen developers do large subdivisions, and they haven't quite nailed some of these processes, and it's a year later and they can't get their titles. So
definitely. Yep, definitely. All right. Thank you very much, Dave, for sharing your expertise. I think it's been a very valuable session, and hopefully our listeners will get a lot of benefit from that. If nothing else, hopefully we've scared our listeners a little bit into making sure they really focus on what's going on in the ground, right?
Yeah.
So spend time with your surveyor, civil engineer. If you're not interested in any of this stuff, all the pipes and drainage and foundations and so on, tough. You're going to need to learn about it. You need to spend time in this area. And sometimes, I've found that when I learn new things, it's sometimes the thing that you don't like the most is the most important thing that you need to learn. It's almost a sign. I remember when I started reading some of these reports, and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is not for me. This is just not going in. But if you're feeling that means you need to spend more time on it. That means you need to sit down with people like Dave and a civil engineer and your planner, and actually, if you can't understand those reports, highlight the areas and set up a meeting and go and sit down with them and ask them to explain it to you. That's how you learn, and then you'll learn a little bit more with each development, and it'll get clearer and clearer, and it'll get easier. And I'm by no means a surveyor or a civil engineer, but I've learned enough to ask questions, ask good questions, and also to I've learned what to look out for, I suppose. And then I just make sure that I try and work with the best consultants that I can. I mean, the guys who have done it before, they know what they're doing, and they're looking out for you and trying to help you out. But that's, yeah. So thank you very much for listening. Any questions, please reach out to us. And if you haven't done so already and you want to join the Property Development Club, just head over to thepropertydevelopmentclub.com. The course is still for sale at a cheapest chips, 337 New Zealand dollars. It's 40 videos, interactive videos covering the 17 steps in property development. So if you haven't done a development, or even if you've done a couple, there's still a ton to learn. Share 20 years of experience in that, the lessons that I've learned about property development, right the way from design and consent all the way through pre-sales to construction and settlement.
John, just before you leave, I think we should mention that we had the first meetup in Cambridge last Wednesday night, and this is
we had a really good turnout.
It's not a big city. It's a great turnout, over 25 people or something. Must have been everyone in the course in Cambridge, but there was people. One chap, we know him well. He flew up from Geraldine, and
where people come out of Auckland, Tauranga, Rotorua.
And the good thing, I talked to most of them, not all, but most of them. They've all got a story to tell. They're all interested in development. There's a couple of young people there who that's what they want to do. They have no idea. They're perfect for the course. But there's also some I couldn't believe the caliber of the people I was meeting. Some very, very successful business people and professionals.
Yes.
And they've either bought a site, or they're thinking about it, or they've just started doing something. And that really doesn't surprise me in retrospect, but it surprised me at the time. And these people have joined the club, and they are successes in their own right. And they just want to learn development and do some development. And then there's the other people who've actually done a number of developments. And, I was getting taught everything to do with power lines and how close you can build to power lines, which is not something I've done before. And, but, and they know their stuff. So that's great for the community, because you're not just getting John Kennel, you're not just getting a little bit of Andrew, you're getting 260 plus other people who, many of which know their stuff and have done
many of them are in and around property. They're builders and electricians, and there's a surveyor. So there's a lot of experience coming in, and that's something we're trying to do on the weekly calls, is to pull that experience out. So when people have questions, let's put that back to the group, to the whole mastermind group. There's so much experience out there, and that's something I'd really like to see happen in future, is this sharing. So as people do developments, that they feed that information back into the group, and we can all learn from it. When we're 5,000 people and we're developing all across the country, and development's going underway every day. Imagine the information that's coming back in, the processes that work, the technologies people are using, what products, what are councils saying in different parts of the country, what rules are changing. It's quite a dynamic sort of a field, really, property development. It's always changing. There's always new regulation. So keeping up and having that information coming back into the club is going to be very valuable.
It's extremely valuable, because as an example, if I need to know anything about power lines, I know exactly who to talk to now. He's been through it. You'll save me 20 grand,
Right.
But also Dave did a session with us this morning, and some great comments, some great insights from other surveyors, other engineers, some great questions from developers doing it. I reckon, John, I don't reckon anyone will be able to develop in this country soon unless they're part of the community. It's too damn hard, right? So all you're doing with the community, with the Property Development Club community, is you're actually you're forming a facility to offset all the extra stuff we get from council.
Yeah, absolutely. And also as we grow, what I'd like it to become is a voice for developers. At the moment, developers are all split, divide and conquer, right? So each individual developer goes to council and struggles and has to fight these crazy rules sometimes, and often they get beaten down and they just get told what to do. But if we can actually speak from one voice, well, then we can sit down. We can sit down with mayors, we can sit down with MPs, and we can say, hey, this has to change. This rule is in the way.
There's a voice for the big guys, but previously being a big guy, it's not the same voice that the small and medium developers need. They have different priorities, different avenues, different size.
So you're talking about the property council?
Well, I'm talking about property council, I'm talking about UDINs, which I helped form. Ironically, I helped form that to improve the 224C process. It's only got worse. But we're all big subdivision guys. That's a different
Right.
animal. It's a different
Right.
animal. This is the small and medium. This is the small
Yeah.
business entrepreneurs of New Zealand.
Yeah.
This is the voice for them.
And they actually it can add a lot of housing. Like
Oh, yeah,
somebody
no,
does 2 units here
more.
and someone else does 10 over there. And, you add it up and it's hundreds, it's thousands of new
Yeah.
homes a year that we could be building, but people are afraid to get involved. It's just such a complex process. They don't know where to start. And they're afraid, I think, too, that they get partway into it and they get stuck, and what do they do then? And that's where we really want to help.
I think they get scared of offending council and all that sort of stuff. Trust me, it doesn't happen like that. The amount of people on councils and ministries who contact me after I've almost abused them, they want to know. They don't want.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Very good. Oh, well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Dave, for coming along and sharing your wisdom. And we'll see you again next week.